let's calibrate a Moog MiniMoog Voyager XL. So I've had this keyboard for a few years, and to me, when you talk about the Cadillac of American synthesizers, this is it. And by the Cadillac, I mean they have a very storied name. They're an American company, but also like a Cadillac, I kind of feel like they're big, they're heavy, they're overpriced for what they offer. They're difficult to maintain and kind of a labor of love if you like that sort of thing. And you know, nothing is a Cadillac and nothing is a Moog except, you know, a Cadillac or a Moog. This is patch 12 clockwork. You can hear something's a little bit out of tune here. So if we go to Oscillator 2 and just tweak the tuning, we can see that it's currently set to -1. So there should be a little detuning effect, but there's way more than a little. So we need to tune it down. To get it back to unison pitch. I figured I would share this procedure. Hope everything goes well. This is the start. We'll see how we finish. So the first step to calibrating the pitch of the oscillators is to check to see that the pitch and mod wheel are calibrated correctly. And to do this, we hit the master button and we step through the pages until we see software version, which we're looking at, and then we hit enter, and we can see we have software version 3.6 from December of 2010. And if we hit the cursor button again, we get to a hidden menu that shows us the pitch and mod wheel. So I'm going to move the mod wheel. The mod wheel's all the way back. I'm going to push it all the way forward, and it goes from 0 to 255. This is correct. Now, the pitch bend wheel is a little bit more of a problem because it should be sitting at 0, but instead it's sitting at -1. And if I turn it all the way up, we can see it's 127. If I let it go, we're back down to -1. And then if I pull it all the way down, it's -128. So the extreme values are correct, -128 to 127, but the resting position is wrong. It's at -1, but it should instead be 0. And when I was going through the instructions on this, it says if the wheel voltages are correct, you need to tweak the null. And then it goes into some more information. Well, the wheel voltages are not correct, and there's no information from the PDF I received from Moog that tells you how to resolve this problem. And I emailed tech support several times and they never got back to me. But you know, I went and did some research and found a text document that someone had posted that explains how to calibrate the pitch and mod on a regular Moog Voyager. So I'm going to go with that file and we'll see if we can get this to work like it should. So lifting the controller up, I'm not surprised to see that, look, there's a loose part. I'm guessing that that's a wire that's going to go to the chassis to ground to the chassis, and that's come loose. So I'm going to see if I might have a nut that's going to be the same size. And I believe that ribbon is the pressure ribbon for the keyboard controller. And then if we lift this up a little bit more, I can see that there are some trim pots there, and that must be the trim pots for the wheels, but I don't really have much more in the way of documentation there. So I think what I'm going to try and do is take just a snapshot of that and then try to have a look at it and figure out what's going on. But I believe that is going to be what we're going to need to adjust to get these wheels to work correctly. Well, happy days. To my surprise, I was able to adjust the center voltage. So I took some close-up pictures, which you can see here now, and I could clearly see that there was a trimmer labeled as pitch 0, and I put a little screwdriver in there and tapped it, and the first thing I saw was that my center value went from -1 to 13, and then I just turned it very, very small increments, and now when I move my pitch wheel, it's 0 in the middle, all the way we've got +127, and then all the way back we've got -128. So that did not turn out to be quite as crazy and as difficult as I thought, though. Now that I've made that adjustment, goofy. It looks like the mod wheel. I wonder if there's a supply voltage thing that these guys are referencing, because we're, no, let's see. We're good here, we're good here. How about the mod wheel? Oh, maybe the mod wheel is just getting hung there. Okay, yeah. Mod wheel, good. Mod 0 to 255. We're 0 there, -128, +127. Okay, I'm going to put those screws back in place and button up the left-hand controller module, and then we'll move on to the really good part, which is going to be calibrating all those oscillators. Okay, so the Voyager is finally ready for the calibration process. So following the recommendations in the PDF, I've got a couple of little wood blocks that are holding the Voyager electronics at around a 90-degree angle, and then the back panel only wanted to drop down so far. It felt like there was a limit to the travel based on the hinge, so I added in a towel just to give it a little extra support so we wouldn't be stressing the hinge the whole time. And as we look at the electronics in the Voyager, kind of going from left to right, we've got the power supply there. The next thing we have is the digital interface board, and then we have all of the actual electronics for this fantastic analog sound we get. You can see everything's nicely labeled. We've got adder exponentiator section, oscillator section, wave shaping section, another adder exponentiator. We've got the modulation bus up here, the pedal modulation bus and the wheel modulation bus. Well, that says accessory port, which is what the leads to the expansion panel there. Various trimmers, headphone jack, and then there's the expansion section right there, MiniMoog Voyager 2010, and then we have the whole interface panel right up there. And one fun thing, there's just this nice little piece of copper paneling here. This is just something to make it look pretty, so when you've got the whole thing put together, you see the name Moog on the back. But as you would expect, it's very, very nicely laid out. Okay, I'm going to cut to the happy ending for this story. I went through the whole procedure once. It was some trial and error involved, but just to give you an idea of how things turned out, I'm going to, let's see, here's just oscillator 1. Going to add in oscillator 2. I mean, those two oscillators are really, really close to being in tune. I mean, that's pretty darn great. And then adding in oscillator 3. So that sounds pretty darn good. When I was doing the procedure on this Moog Voyager XL, I was struggling with what notes to use because I was gravitating towards using the C as my bass note for the calibration, but the documentation that you will find, maybe Moog will send it to you, or maybe you can find it online. I'll try to post a link to the documentation that I have. It's built around the original MiniMoog Voyager, which has a shorter key bed. So it goes from this, F to this C. I put the blue tape on there just to show the difference. This is where the Moog Voyager would be. The XL adds these additional keys down here. So this is how the procedure works. There are 4 trimmers for every oscillator. Okay, so the first problem I had was figuring out exactly what trimmers to adjust. I could see RP11 here in the oscillator section, and I found RP9. It took me a little bit of digging around to see RT2, because they're different tremors. They're those little gray blocks. So there's RT2, and then up here we have RT1. Whoops, out of focus there. So RT1, RT2, RP9, and then RP11. The first two tremors you use are these small little grayish tremors, and then the second two tremors are large blue tremors. I actually used two different sized screwdrivers to make the adjustments, because the first two tremors, they're fairly small. The next tremor, they're a little bit larger in size. And what you do is you start off by starting with oscillator 1. The default setting is going to be the 8-foot range, and when you play an E, they call it the low E on the keyboard. In this case, it's going to be this E. You should get a E3 from your tuning, and I'm using this app on my iPhone, Tuner T1, which worked really, really well. And that's right on, that's an E1. So you adjust that first tremor to where you have E1 when you play that E. Then you go down to the 32-foot setting and play the E. And that should be an E1, which makes sense because at 8 feet this was an E3. You go down 2 octaves, it should be an E1. When you play this lower E, or the 32-foot range E, you adjust the second tremor until that pitch is exactly an E1. After you've made that change, that will affect the pitch of your higher E1, the one in the 8-foot range. So you will adjust that first tremor again to where this note is exactly on an E1. And then you go back down to the low one and you adjust the second tremor. So you do back and forth, and you should find that the amount of offset between the true note and, you know, however many cents you happen to be off, that range gets smaller and smaller until there is no difference. This is right on E3 and this is right on E1. So that's using the first two tremors. Once you've got those locked in, you go up to 1 foot and you play the E, and that should be an E6. Which it is, because I did the calibration. So that's when you adjust the third tremor. You adjust the third tremor, the slightly larger one, until that E1, that E note with the 1 foot setting is exactly on pitch. But again, because you've made this change now, when you go back to the 8 foot, that will probably be a little bit off. So you start the whole process again. You get the E1, you get the 8 foot E in pitch, go down, check the low one, adjust those first two tremors again till they're spot on. You go back and check your highest one, and you adjust that one. You repeat this process until all 3 of those notes are exactly in tune. And then the last thing you do, this will be when you use the 4th tremor, you go back to 8 foot, but you play the highest E. And that's going to be an E5. And so you adjust that 4th tremor until your E5 is dead on pitch. And as you may have guessed, when you make that adjustment to the 4th tremor and you come back and play this low E, it's going to be a little out of tune. May not be, but it will probably slightly be off. So again, you cycle through the whole process again. You check 8, you check 32. When they're good, you check the 1 foot. And then when all of those are good, you come back and check your high E. And you cycle through this process over and over again until no matter which one of those E's you play, they're exactly in tune. And when you've got all of that working for oscillator 1, you then turn oscillator 1 off and you repeat the whole process for oscillator 2. When you've got that oscillator done, you repeat the whole process for Oscillator 3. Now, in the notes that I found, there was mention of a procedure involving initialized patch 5 that you can try and contact Moog to get, and it involved a 5th trim pot, but I don't know anything about it. I wasn't able to get any information on it. But the good news is, using just an initialized patch, I was able to really dial this MiniMoog Voyager XL in, and it sounds so much better now than it did before I calibrated it. So I hope you find this information helpful. If you've got MiniMoog Voyager, they really are great sounding instruments. There's a lot that's unique to the MiniMoog Voyager. One thing that I really like is the fact that it has the dual low pass filters. It has dual filters. They can both be low pass, or one can be low pass and high pass. They've got dual voltage controlled amplifiers as well, because you get a true stereo output. And then there's a spacing control where if they're both dual low pass filters, you can control the width between those filters. And it's a pretty neat, it's not something that was on the original MiniMoog, so it's not on the releases, the new reissue rather, of the MiniMoog, but it's one of the things that gives this synthesizer some unique character. So I hope you found this helpful. It was a little slow start, and the whole calibration procedure took me around 2 or 3 hours. I don't think anybody wants to watch somebody calibrate an analog synth for 2 or 3 hours. But if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll try to get a link to that PDF on the tuning procedure in this video as well.